Hey everybody, welcome to Mindset 101, one of the most foundational classes that we have here at Impact Theory University. And I am super excited to go through this with you because mindset is one of the most foundational things in your life. It is certainly the thing that transformed my entire life, and I'll go deeper into my story in a minute. But the reason that this is one of the most important things that you could be learning about is because what you think of as you is really this very complicated interplay of a lot of things, including beliefs, values, identity, frame of reference, which is something that we will definitely talk about, inborn traits, both physical and emotional, repetitive thoughts, your habits and routines, the rules you have in your life, which is a whole course unto itself, and a bunch of other shit. And I want you guys to really understand that mindset is a set of beliefs around what is possible in life. So getting that right, getting your understanding of exactly what you're capable of, exactly what the world is going to bring to you, all of that stuff is incredibly, incredibly important. And mindset undermines all of that. And it's really going to determine the entire quality of your life. And there are two things that we're going to discuss in detail in this course. And that is a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And once you understand the difference between those two and how to build a growth mindset and quite frankly, avoid a fixed mindset, then you're going to have the foundation that you need to build any kind of success on top of that you want. But it really does all begin with that mindset. Now, why does this course in particular matter? Nobody sums that up better than Nietzsche. And the quote goes like this: "To those human beings who are of any concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, sickness, ill treatment, indignities. I wish that they should not remain unfamiliar with profound self-contempt, the torture of self-mistrust, the wretchedness of the vanquished. I have no pity for them, because I wish them the only thing that can prove today whether one is worth anything or not. That one endures." I have the chills on my face right now. The reason that quote gives me the chills is because, to me, the very meaning of life is to see how many skills you can acquire that have utility and then put those skills to use in the service of something bigger than yourself. But the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to build into the core of your being the ability to endure. Life is hard. Life is going to kick you in the face. There are going to be 1,000 times in your life when you're going to want to give up. And the only thing that is going to see you through, the only thing that's going to make sure that you actually fucking endure is your mindset. And if you get that right, if you lay the foundation for that, if you put all the pieces in place, then you're going to persevere. Then you're going to push through. Then you're going to be able to see things through to the end. But if you don't do that, then you're going to break. And that's what I see happen to so many people. And that's where my own life started, was not believing in myself. And that is one of the most important things for you to understand, is that your mindset is one of the most important feeders into your perspective, and perspective is everything. And the first most important decision that we all have to make, and this is one of my favorite Einstein quotes, is each and every one of us has to decide whether we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. And understanding that that is a choice, that's the critical part. And a lot of people don't see that as a choice. They believe that the universe is either working with them or it's working against them, and it's just a matter of fact. It isn't something that's open to interpretation. And what I want you guys to understand with the whole Mindset 101 course is one very simple thing. It is a decision. It's something that you have to decide. And whatever it is that you decide, you're going to end up seeing the evidence for that. So you have to be really careful whether you decide that life is difficult, it's this slew of things that's coming at you that's trying to break you and nothing ever good happens to you. Or if you choose to believe, no matter what happens to you, you can always choose your response. You can always choose to believe that it's happening for you and not to you. And in that perspective, in having that mindset, then you're going to begin to look for the solutions. You're going to look for the ways out. You're going to look for the lesson that you can learn in the hardship. That is mindset. It's a subset of beliefs about what you're capable of and what the world really is at its foundation, whether it's working for you or against you. So understand that these things are all a choice. Mindset also just affects a whole lot of stuff in your life. From happiness, it affects the outcome because you're going to take on the burden of learning and growing and being able to flip something from a negative to positive. It removes you as an obstacle, which is something we're going to talk more about. I think the number one thing that holds people back is their own mindset. When they see or when they choose to believe that the world is working against them, they just quit. And why wouldn't you? Why would you try to move forward if it's hopeless? If the world is just a deck of cards that's stacked against you and you're never going to be able to get ahead. I get that. And that's why I tell people the only belief that matters is that you can grow and get better. Once you believe that, then everything unlocks from that. And another thing that having a growth mindset is going to help you do is it's going to keep you open to criticism. A lot of people are shut down by criticism, and a lot of times that criticism is going to unlock a whole new set of potential for you. And it's going to reframe stress as challenges instead of something that's dangerous. Mindset also plays deeply into your self-esteem. It also helps you regulate your emotions, and it, like I said, is going to allow you to flip things from negative to positive. All right, that is why this is so critically important. Now I want to walk you through why so many people struggle with this. Building an empowering mindset is very difficult for people because they're fighting against oftentimes decades worth of entrenched beliefs that started when they were a kid. One of the most devastating things about me, and this really frustrates me about mindset, and it frustrates me about the general importance of childhood, is that, first of all, many people have a shitty childhood. They have parents that are modeling terrible behaviors, and they don't realize that the mindset that's building up in them is actually choices that they're making along the way, whether it's just to listen to what your parents say or the behavior that's being modeled by your friends or what you see your teachers doing. But all of that stuff are these little choices that are being made when you're far too young to understand that they're choices, and they're beginning to solidify and then hardwire in your mind. So when you get caught up in these negative loops, which happen in childhood, they begin to seem like objective truth instead of recognizing them for what they are, which is really just these patterns that have become hardwired. So Mindset 101 is about going in, unwinding that stuff, but it's incredibly difficult because it's been happening since you were a kid. So one of the things you're going to want to do in this course is to just begin to recognize the patterns that have happened, that have been planted in your youth, and begin to supplant them with new patterns. The easiest way to sum it up in a single sentence is to say most people build their mindset by accident. It just happens slowly over time. Another thing that can have a really big impact on people is things like bullying or just overall negative experiences. And those are the things that I'm talking about when I say by accident. It's just life. It's happening to you. But all the while you're imprinting what that means. You're making these little decisions about what does it mean to be bullied? Does it mean that the world is against me? What does it mean to have something negative happen to me? All of that stuff plays into your belief about yourself and the world. Another thing that really messes with people is they don't have a real understanding of the brain. This was a big breakthrough moment for me when I really began to research the brain and came across the whole notion of brain plasticity. When I was growing up, people actually debated whether or not an old dog could learn new tricks. And people said that you're born with a certain number of brain cells and that's it. And hey, every time you go out and party, you're just diminishing your brain cells and you die with far fewer than you began with. And now science has proven that absolutely is not true. And being able to imagine that process, I think will really help you guys. People also hold the mistaken belief that only kids are able to learn, that, up until say 11, 12, or 13, it's easy to learn, and people often cite languages. And after that, it gets a lot harder. But again, that just isn't true. It doesn't match the brain science. It just, as a lifestyle, we don't often put ourselves through the paces that kids are going through. And that doesn't mean the kids don't have an easier time. They do, but it is certainly something that you can do to a profound extent as you get older. But thinking that you can't is really going to hold you back. Now, one thing that I think I need to address is I'm not saying that we're blank slates. Unfortunately, we're not. I wish we were, but we all do have certain predilections, things that we learn more easily than somebody else. So some of you guys are going to struggle with some of the basics around mindset. It may be harder for you than somebody else. But my question is, and now what? All of us are going to struggle with something. And so getting over that and not playing the victim, not worrying about whether it's harder for you than it is for other people, but just getting after it. There's a whole bunch of other things that may impact you, from being less open, having lower agreeability, having higher anxiety, a desire for emotional safety, low self-esteem, not taking ownership in your life. The list goes on and on. All of those things are going to be something that you have to take control of, that you have to figure out what in that pack of things that could be holding you back is actually stopping you, and you're going to need to remove that as a roadblock. And that's one of the things that is at the very foundation of a growth mindset. So we are going to address that. So don't worry if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling alone, if you feel like all of those things apply to you, and there's no way that you could overcome this stuff. I promise you, by the end of this class, you're going to be empowered. You're going to know exactly what to do. You're going to know the exact steps that you need to take to get on the other side of this. Now, I can hear you asking, Tom, why should we be listening to you? And the answer to that question is, I've been through it. I went through starting from the worst fixed mindset that you can imagine, making horrific and stupid decisions because I had a fixed mindset. At one point, I actually referred to myself as the king of remedial jobs. And all I was trying to do was put myself in a position where I'd be smarter than the people around me. And that is a terrible strategy, especially when you're not the brightest person around. So I got a 990 on my SATs. I took it twice. That is my combined score, which is terrible, but that was where I started. And my whole life was about looking smart, not getting better, not educating myself, not actually becoming smart. My whole life was about looking smart. And when I went to college, I ended up having a pretty emotionally difficult time. I did well in the beginning and I was really crushing it, and that's a story for another day. By the time I finished, I felt like a complete and absolute failure. And when I walked out of college, I really felt like I was walking into hopelessness. I did not know how to make something of my life. And I felt like I had failed in film school, which is what I studied. And I came out not knowing how I was going to rebuild from the realization that I did not have talent. And that's not me being humble. That was the reality. And my life has since proven that you can build talent. But at the time, I realized I didn't have talent. And what did that mean for the rest of my life? And then I got a lucky break and I started teaching. And in teaching, I realized I was in so far over my head that the only way that I was going to be able to go into class and not embarrass myself was to start doing all this crazy research at night, putting these lesson plans together. And then in doing that and going in and teaching the students, I realized I actually could make their films better. And in realizing that I could make their films better, I started to ask myself the very simple question, can I not make my own films better? And that combined with my obsessive reading about the brain, because I was trying to avoid a slow slide to depression. I needed to believe that there was hope. I needed to believe that I could get better. And like I said, at the time, it was hotly debated whether or not older people could learn new things, whether the brain was truly plastic or whether it was fixed. And I decided, again, these are choices. I decided to believe that I could get good at anything. I decided to believe that the brain really was plastic. And that ended up being one of these transitional moments in my life upon which everything else rested. And because I made that decision, I started to see it everywhere, most notably when I was teaching. And then, the break of all breaks, I met fellow entrepreneurs and they invited me to work in their startup. And they said, look, you can have any job in this company you want, but you have to become the right person for the role. And that meant I was gonna have to learn a lot. I was in so far over my head. I had no idea what was going on, but I was so desperate to get rich, which is a story for another day. But at that time in my life, I was so desperate to get rich. I thought, I've gotta fucking learn this. I've got to figure this stuff out. Otherwise, I'm gonna get left behind. And so that became my obsessive mission, was to get good, to learn. But by being around other people that had what we would now call a growth mindset, unfortunately, I did not have those words back then, but what we now call a growth mindset, being around people that were convinced to the core of their being that they could improve, I then adopted that same belief. I adopted the value system of the people that I was around, moving quickly, pushing myself, getting way the hell outside of my comfort zone, making massive demands of myself, holding myself to a standard, taking complete and total ownership of my life. And it changed everything. And I took myself from scrounging in my couch cushions to find enough change to put gas in my car, that is a real story, to building a billion-dollar business. And that transformation, which was purely a transformation of mindset and skill set, is exactly what we're going to be talking about in this course. And the very goal of this course is to help you guys understand at a detailed level the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. We're going to cover that in detail. We're going to talk about the beliefs that are needed to build a growth mindset. We're going to talk about how to develop your talent and intelligence, which most people think is a fixed trait. That would be a sign of a fixed mindset. We're going to talk about the process to acquiring skills. We're going to talk about how to avoid the traps that are coming your way. And let me tell you right now, if that sounds insurmountable, let me promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. Too often people look at me as the after picture and they don't realize just how much I had to crawl through, including low self-esteem, massive insecurities, crippling anxiety, at one point, I couldn't even tell a story in front of 5 people in my own family because my voice was shaking. I was so freaked the fuck out. And right now I'm around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like we have about 7 people in this room. I routinely speak in front of massive crowds. And all of that was a process. It is a process that is teachable. It is things that you can go through to completely and radically change your mindset. And in changing your mindset, you change the wiring of your brain. And that's what I want you guys to understand. You can change the physical structures and the functions of your mind using the things that we're going to cover in this class. So my friends, get ready, because in the second section of this class, we're going to cover the specifics. I'm going to give you the exact tools that you're going to need. So when you're ready, go ahead and join me in section 2. I'll see you there.